Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one life at a time. And together we can make, a massive change out there. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share all the stuff. Really excited for our guest today. Greg Birch runs Delta Financial. He just started this year, but he's been in the financial industry about 5 years. He has 4 kids, came from a military background. So thank you for your service to our country. Thanks for being on, Greg. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Angela, for having me on. I appreciate it. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, let's go back to 5 years ago. You got out of the military, it sounds like, and you got into financial services. Why financial services coming out of the military, and how long were you in the Army, by the way?
So I served for 11 years. I was an officer. I got an ROTC scholarship coming out of high school. I graduated, the year I graduated was 2001. So September 11th, 2001, or it was actually 2002 when I graduated, but September 11th, 2001, I was a senior in high school. Applied, I wanted to go serve. I knew I wanted to go to war. So I got an ROTC scholarship and went to college through ROTC, got my commission, deployed twice, went to Iraq and Afghanistan, did 11 years. And I got to a point where I was like, I want to test my mettle kind of in the civilian world, see what I can do. Because there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of I guess, antiquated promotion rules and laws and stuff like that are in place that, it kind of keeps people stagnant for a little bit too long. And whereas in the civilian world, if you're exceptional and you're crushing it, there's no timeline. Like you can just hit new levels and just continue to go to the level of your expertise. And I felt I was being held back. And there's a lot of other factors that go into it. But ultimately, it was my decision to say, you know what, I want to go test my mettle. So I got out of the military in May 2017. It was literally 11 years to the day because I got in May 2006. And so I initially started, the reason when I got out is there's companies called JMO Headhunters, which is Junior Military Officer Headhunters. And what they do is they help junior military officers translate their previous experiences and jobs and all their job duties, all their evaluations. They translate it to where it makes sense for a Fortune 500 company, because the way that we spoke and the way we talked about all of our accomplishments didn't match up. It didn't make sense to people at Fortune 500 companies. Like, oh yeah, you seem really accomplished, but it doesn't really translate. And it's because of that. And so what they would do is they would basically reverbalize everything that we did for Fortune 500 companies. They would do testing. They would say, hey, you're good. These are the areas that you're good at. And these are the companies that kind of align with that we have access to in Fortune 500. And it was a way to get to a bottom level executive position and work your way up into the top of executive levels. And I tested very high in sales and leadership. And that always stuck with me. So when I was getting out, I had a guy that was also went through that program, and he was already out. He got up before me. And he was like, well, why don't you just come work with me in my company? And this is where I work. And he worked at Public Storage. And so I was like, all right, dope. I'll go work at Public Storage. And so I went and applied. I talked to the president of the company. I did an application interview process, got picked. And they said, we're going to put you in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because that's where my buddy was. We're going to have you guys work together. So I was like, okay, dope. I'm out. I'm down. So that's how I got to Dallas-Fort Worth. I did that job, and about 4 months in, I was miserable. I hated it. It was like the grind. And it was a different kind of grind, because I was working for somebody else,
Right.
And I spent most of my time chasing people to pay their bill. Right. So I was a bill collector, which was not fun. And these were like people that don't pay any of their bills. Right.
Right.
And you're trying to get them to pay a $40 a month, storage bill, and then cutting locks on people's storage to do itemization and basically sell off their stuff, like in Storage Wars. That stuff's real. Like, we did Storage Wars once a month, and it was a constant cycle of like collections, Storage Wars, collections, Storage Wars. and if in the summer of, because this was in the summer of 2017, I probably spent countless days out in the sun cutting locks. It is not fun. It's just not fun. Like I would get steel splinters in my skin because of the way cutting all these locks. Anywho, it hit me. I was like, I don't have to do this. Like, I'm not in the military anymore. Uncle Sam doesn't control me. I can do whatever the hell I want. So I just said, you know what? This isn't for me. And I quit. And didn't even have a backup plan. No backup plan. Like, not for me. And I told one of my buddies, I came in and saying, work, I'm sorry. I left. And I stayed unemployed for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I finally I started going to Indeed, and I made a resume in Indeed. And I started putting my resume out there. And I went to some company. I don't even know the name of the company. I don't remember it because it was a fake company.
Oh, geez.
And it was like an umbrella shell corp company that I applied to it, and I looked it up, and like it was non-existent. I was like, what is this company? But it was a sales leading to management position that I was like, sales and management. That's what I scored on in. Let's go. So they responded immediately. They were like, hey, we love your resume. We want you to come in for an interview. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. So we scheduled an interview, and I showed up, and it was a mass interview with like 60 people there. And
Wow.
it was a life insurance company.
Okay.
And it was a different company. And I was like, this is kind of skeevy. And I was like, life insurance? I don't know about this. Like, this is weird. It was a captive company. And but I stayed. I was like, you know what? I'm not really doing anything else. I don't have a job. Why not? And I sat there and I watched every single person that worked there. And I noticed 2 things. First off, none of them were exceptional. They were just run of the mill, regular people. The second thing is that all of them they all had nice suits, nice watches, nice cars. And I was like, so they're doing something right. And my next thought was, if they can do it, I can definitely do it.
Oh my gosh, sounds so much like me. That's awesome. I love it.
If they can do it, I can do it. So I sat there and I listened, and I heard their pitch, and I just thought, you know what? I'll get my license. And if it doesn't work out, so what? I'll go do something else. And I have my license. I have an extra licensure on my belt. So what? Right? Doesn't cost so much to get a license. Doesn't take that long. And that was in October of 2017. I started applying, and I actually got my license, I think, in November 2017, but they allowed me to sell. They allowed me to sell under their banner with a temp license during that time frame. And They were starting, it was a top sales rep in the whole company competition. And it started it was the last quarter of the year, October, November, December. So I got kind of a late start, but I came in, I was like, I'm going to win that competition. And I just started selling like crazy. Like, and I mean, it was a bunch of friends and family, and like everybody I knew. I was going through like every single person I could. It was very, very few like real clients. I mean, I wouldn't say real, but very few like people I didn't know. Right.
Right.
But I did win the competition. And so the CEO flew in, treated me to dinner. I have a football with my name on it that they gave me. So, eventually I ended up leaving there, in 2018. And I went to another company, and 2018 was kind of tumultuous back and forth with multiple companies that I kind of hopped around. And my performance dipped. And that's where, so I feel like in insurance, you have a couple different types of people. You have people that will have success very early, but it's like not really realized success. It's kind of a false sense of success.
Yeah.
And then when reality hits them, they don't have the actual skills, the determination, the work ethic to actually continue to have a momentum and drive.
Right.
That was me. Then you have the people that come in and they suck, and through sucking, they kind of fail forward.
That was
but they learn all these things. Exactly. So you have two kind of, and then you have the people that on either side where they get to a point and they just quit and they're like, hey man, this is too much for me. Right. So, and I was the first one. So, and I've been
really good
financial services
yeah,
ever
and
since.
then you went out. So tell us a little bit about like, you got into RT, you got into personal development. When did you get into personal development, in the journey? You've done 75 hard and obviously, Andy really well. And when did you get into that? And how did that start to impact you? Like, you were sucking, you started out good, you were sucking. Where did the personal development come in and how do you feel that influenced, your growth back toward the top?
So, and that's a great question. So, well, I started to not suck when I started focusing fundamentals, which was really at the end of 2018. So I had this specifically impactful situation where I was sitting with a top producer. I was finally an independent broker. I was in an IMO, and I had just gotten there. It was November of 2018. It was the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Him and I talked a couple of times, and he was in Chicago, but he flew into Dallas Fort Worth, which is where I live. And he would buy leads, and he would buy leads for like 3 weeks, and then he would fly in for a weekend and run those leads, and then he would fly back and he would just do that because leads were plentiful at that time in Dallas Fort Worth, all like mortgage leads. And he calls me. He's like, "Hey man, I'm in town. I just finished my appointment. Would you like to sit down and just kind of chat and hang out?" And I was like, "Yeah, bro, definitely." So he meets us, or he was on the Fort Worth side. He meets us in Dallas, and he leaves. And we end up leaving, and we went downtown Dallas and Deep Ellum, and we went to Sears Pizza and had a slice of pizza and a beer, and we're sitting there talking. And I was like, "Hey man, how'd your weekend go?" And he was like, "Yeah, I just finished my last appointment. I sold 33,000." And I was like, for the month? He's like, "Nah, man, for the last 2 days." I was like,
You're buying
what?
the beer and the pizza.
What and I was like, "Dude, I can barely even sell 3,000 in a month. What are you doing?" Like, dude, this is my backyard. Like, you came to my hometown and you're like, what? And I was like, dude, give me a secret sauce. What are you doing? Like, you got to be doing something special. Come on. And so he has this whole conversation with me. He's like, let me ask you some questions, Greg. He's like, "Hey, are you going to daily trainings every single week?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, like I've been in insurance for, a little bit over a year. So I've been already doing trainings, and like, if I see one that I don't know about, I'll definitely join. But like, there's other ones, like I got other things I'm doing. So, but I already know it. I'm good." He's like, "Okay." He's like, are you buying leads every single week?" "Well, I bought leads, 2 weeks ago. Trying to get some profit out of them. But as soon as I do, I'll probably buy another set here soon." "Okay. Are you locking down your schedule when you do your dials to clients to set your appointments? Are you doing nothing but dialing?" I decided that, I would dial a little bit every day, right? At different times to try to see when I can actually hit people when they might be off.
Oh my gosh, this is so good.
And he's like, "Okay, all right." He's like, "Well, are you setting the right amount of appointments here every single week? Are you setting 30 appointments every week to make sure that you have the right amount of sits?" I only was able to sit like 3 appointments last week. I sat with 2. I sold 1. He's like, "Okay." And he like leans in and he looks me dead in my eyes. He's like, "Greg, I know your problem. You think you're special and you're not."
I love it.
And it was just like, it was like a jolt to my heart. I was like, who is this guy? Which, by the way, this guy, he is a Russian American. He'd been an American citizen for about a year. He had the thickest Russian accent, and
Oh
he
my
looks
God.
like Gru from Despicable Me. No joke.
Right. Okay, I got the picture. Yep.
So this guy, and I'm like, there's nothing special about him. Like, I sound better than him. I look better than him. Like, what is going on? And and now he's going to tell me that I'm not special. Like,
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow.
and I'm getting all like, this guy's got some guts. And he just looks at me. He's like, "Dude, I'm not special either." He's like, "The reason that I've had my success is because I realize that I'm not special and I follow the fundamentals. I buy leads every single week because it forces me to resolve every single lead every single week. I make dials. I lock down my dial days. He's like, for instance, one of my dial days is Thursday. This next Thursday is Thanksgiving. He's like, you know what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be dialing. You know why? Because everybody's home.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. And everyone's going to be answering, and they're going to feel bad for me because I'm like, my boss is making me work. And they're going to be like, oh man. And I'm going to set a massive weekend. You know what other people are going to do? They're going to make excuses and say, oh, well, it's family day. I got to spend time with my family. He's like, I'm going to spend time with my family too. He was like, but I don't treat my business like a hobby. I treat it like a business, and I have to get to work. He was like, I make sure I do 30 appointments, because if I don't have 30 appointments, I'm not hitting the numbers I'm supposed to hit. And he's like, and last but not least, I train. I go to every single training because I can learn something from everybody, no matter how good I think I am. And it's about being humble enough to try to learn from everybody in every situation. And then he pulls up his phone and he holds his phone up like this. And he's like, see? And on his phone, he had taken a picture of his goals. And his goals is 2018. It was his first year in insurance. He was like, his goal was to sell $400,000 of insurance on his personal pen by the end of the year. And he had sold 650,000.
Wow.
He was like, I put this on my phone, and it was a piece of paper that he had written out. I'm going to sell 400,000. And by the end of 2018, he took a picture of it. He hung it on his wall by his bed. And he was like, I look at my phone, and every single time I look at it, reminds me that I need to get to work. And that's the key, is like setting your proper goals. And that was a very pivotal moment in my financial service career. That's when I really went all in. That's when I was like, I need to start doing these fundamentals. And it took a whole year of me half-assing it before I finally did that. And so I went home that day, that night. I think it was November 18th, 2018. It was Saturday before Thanksgiving. And I wrote down, I'm going to hit $400,000 of insurance off my personal pen 2019. And I'm going to become a VP in my organization. And I wrote it down 2 pieces of paper, and I took a picture of it, and I put it on the lock screen, and I put it on the home screen. And then I taped it to my fridge, and then I taped it to the wall beside my bed. So I saw it all the time. And in 2018, between the 4 companies I was jumping around about, I sold 75,000 annual premium about. And I made about 60K ish. In 2019, I sold 425,000. And I brought home, well, I got deposited over 350,000. Was my first massive year. And so that was the start of where I was like, okay, this is real. Like I'm in, like I'm all in. And so, but I was really just grinding. I was working really hard. Wasn't working efficiently. I was working just like, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to outwork every person I can. Right. I'm going to make more dials. I'm going to do more appointments, all this. So that's really where I kind of made the transition to this is such a good opportunity, and I'm going to do the work. And I started to get good. And COVID happened. It kind of changed everything. And that's when I started to do, remote sales, because I was all in the field, in the home, stuff like that.
Yep.
And I met a person while I was creating my own remote sales program, because our company didn't teach it. And they were actually very much against it. So I was kind of on my own. I reached out to very prominent names in the insurance industry that were like known for remote sales. I bought books. I started self-teaching. And I guess that's kind of where I started the personal development, because I was just like, I'm going to make this work no matter what. And it was really from an intrinsic belief that like, I didn't want to go in the home, because I was afraid that if I was a carrier of the virus, that I was sitting with people that were health compromised, that were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And I was like, dude, if I sit with somebody and they happen to get it, and I didn't even know I was a carrier, and then they die 2 weeks later, that death is on me. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, nope, I am not going. And I like was adamant, I am not going in the home again during this time frame. And I'm going to make this work. And I didn't. And I have not been in a client's home since.
Me neither.
So yeah, I mean, the power of belief, right?
Yeah, that's so good.
It's just commitment. So during this time frame, during 2020 is when I met somebody and I was teaching, because I was teaching all these different agents about, because I started getting really good at remote sales. And then I started teaching agents about it in my company. And I met somebody that was like, you really remind me of Andy Frisella. Like the way that you talk about things, the way you teach things, I'm a very direct person. And my middle name's Andrew as well. So,
Oh, there we go.
So they were like, you really remind me of him. Do you know who he is? I was like, I had no clue. I was like, who the hell is Andy Frisella? I don't know who he is. They're like, yeah, he runs First Form. I was like, what the hell is First Form? I don't even know what that is.
Right.
And so they're like, well, listen to his podcast. And they played the 75 Hard podcast. And I was listening to it and I was like, all right, I like this guy. Like, I like the way he speaks. I like the way he just like no nonsense, straight shooting, right? And like gives zero F's, right? I don't know if I can curse on your podcast or not, but I usually do on mine. He just doesn't care, right? Because he is him. It's authentic, it's transparent. And so I was like, I could get down with this. And so at the time, this person was my girlfriend, and we were like, let's do 75 Hard together. So we're like, hey, let's do it. So we started 75 Hard together, and it was in September, October 2020. And she bowed out day 20 or so, day 18 to 20. I made it to probably day 24, 25. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do it by myself. And I was like, I got it. Like, work out twice a day, got it. Like, I work out all the time. Eat a diet, got it. Like, no alcohol, okay, whatever. Like, got it. Like, this is fine. And didn't really, and I kept listening to because I really liked the podcast, so I kept listening to it, but I just didn't do it again. And then her and I broke up in the end of December 2020. And I have had since I was divorced when I got in the military, and one of the reasons that I ended up getting out, it was another factor that was my decision for getting out. But I'd had these girlfriends that have all these tumultuous relationships that were just like roller coaster rides of emotion and like toxicity and all this stuff. And it was always their fault. They're crazy. This, that, the other.
All of them.
Oh, it's the common denominator was me. So in January, I kind of like came to this realization. I'm like, I'd literally been back to back relationships. Like, I had not been single between relationships for longer than 3 days. It had been like breakup, next day I'm in a relationship. Boom. Like, I go out to a bar, like, you, me, single, let's go. And it was just like that. And it was honestly disgusting. And so, I had a conversation with a therapist because I go to therapy. I have PTSD. I'm diagnosed PTSD, and I go to talk to my therapist and a counselor. And she's like, well, she's like, think of dating like, and picking the partner in your life, kind of like a dress, like a dresser with 4 drawers. Okay. So you have your 4 drawers. And in your 4 drawers, your socks, your underwear, your shorts, your shirts, right? In dating, it's like physical attraction, mental compatibility, spiritual alignment, and then similar life goals. Like, you guys are on the same path, right? She said, right now you're picking women based off of physical attraction and maybe possibly like a mental connection. She was like, so that's like going outside in your socks and underwear every single day. Does that make sense to you? I was like, well, no, when you put it like that, it doesn't. She was like, because you're not taking the time to get to know people. You're rushing into this. And it honestly was because I had dependency issues. I was codependent. I was afraid of being alone. I had depression issues. And so I said, I'm going to spend this time being single and fall in love with myself and like get used to it and like get comfortable, because it was very uncomfortable. And I'm going to focus on my business. So I just focused on my business. And so that's what I did all January. February happens, and it was the Saturday after Valentine's Day for 2021. And I'm listening to the Real AF. I'm in the gym. I remember I was doing a back workout, and I was listening. It was Omar v 75 Hard. And Omar gets on there and he's talking. And there was 2 things he said to me, or said on the podcast, that like struck out to me. And the first thing he said was, He was like, there's people out there that will try the program. They'll get like 25 days in, and then they'll be like, I got it. I got it. I got it. He was like, you don't
You're like,
you don't got it. You don't got it. You don't got it till you get to the end. Like that's where the magic happens. And then he starts talking about all of the accomplishments that he got in his business, all the accomplishments that how it changed every piece of his life. And he's like, at the end of 75 days, I was a different man. I was a different human being. Like I literally transformed into a different person. And something resonated with me so deeply when he said those things that I was like, that's what I need. That's it. Because I was very depressed. I was still low, still missed my ex. I felt alone. And I was like, I need to become a better person. Like these issues have been because of me. And I went ahead and I started the next day. It was on Sunday. Started the next day and I made it through. I was like, I'm not quitting. I ended up throwing my back out like day 30. And I was like, I am not stopping to like heal my back. I was like, I will be in excruciating pain with my workouts. I don't care. I am not stopping this. And that started my personal development journey and really I think the most powerful thing for it was the reading. Because I wasn't a very avid reader, but now I love to read. I read every single day. And it's grown my mind in such ways that um, it's allowed me to take opportunities that I otherwise would not have done because I didn't have the experience or the confidence to attack it. And I had a moment when I was in 75 hard, and I started going back to church, started praying, I started tithing, I started doing these things that I wasn't doing before, and it was these basic things that I knew needed to be done that I made excuses for. And I think the biggest excuse that people make, and in fact, I know the biggest excuse that people make, and it's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves that I don't have the time.
mm,
It is the single biggest lie that every individual in the world tells themselves. And and make no mistake, it is a lie.
mm-hmm.
And I I started going to church, and I had this moment that it was about like day 40, and we were taking sacrament. And usually during sacrament, I do a little prayer to myself, silently, and I would think about any mistakes I made that week, you know, things I wanted to repent for. And I had this. It was I don't know. I had this feeling. I had this urge to start repenting for everything that all the mistakes that I've been making in my entire life. And I started to dig deep. I went back far. I went back to my marriage. I went back to like the start of my marriage. I was like sitting there and I was realizing that like all these relationships, all these things were not in line with the person that I was. Like my heart, the person I am on the inside, I'm a good person. I care about people. I want people to succeed. I want to help people. I don't want to do wrong by people, but I had been, and I've been using somebody else's actions to dictate my own actions and then doing hurtful things back. And I wasn't being a positive influence in the world. And that's what was holding me back. And I started crying in church, and it was a hard thing to face, but it was like this ultimate, like super accountability of this taking accountability for all my actions. And I was like, I am at the place I am in my life because of my actions. These are things that I did. And it's not on them, on me. And my entire perspective shifted in that moment. And it was very cathartic. I was able to release all this pain and this trauma, this emotional trauma. I was able to just let go and move forward unencumbered. Right. And I always tell people, like, if you can look yourself in the mirror and you can take extreme accountability, extreme ownership, if you will, of the things that you've done, and realize things don't happen to you. And I know you like to say things don't happen to you, they happen for you. I say things don't happen to you for you. They happen because of you. You are the author of your story.
Extreme ownership.
And if your story is not where you want it to be, it's because the way that you're writing the story. it is nobody else's fault but your own.
Mhm.
You have control of 4 things: what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do, period. And when outside circumstances happen, whether it's somebody else's actions, whether it's a situation out of your control, doesn't matter. But if it happens and it affects the way that you react, you have given up your control of yourself, of your actions, of what you're saying, of all that. You've given it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also a conscious decision to do so. And so, um, you know, and I realized that I started tapping into a different level of potential that I had. At that time, I had never sold over $55,000 in 1 month of insurance. That was the max I'd ever hit. And I always wanted to sell over 100,000 off my own pen, all issue paid, all express issue life insurance, like boom. And there was a handful of people in our company at the time that had done it. And so I was like, you know what? This is the time. My last month of 75 hard was April 2021. I think I finished like April 30th or something like that, or April 28th, 29th. And so at the start of April, at the end of March, I made a commitment that I was going to hit 6 figures. I was going to hit 100,000 off my own pen. And I was like, I just felt it. Just had this, we're doing this, right? And I'd always made excuses that I couldn't do it. I tried, and I didn't really try, right? And so I was on it was like the next day. It was, I think it was like the first day of the month. And I'd already I knew my numbers. I knew my fundamentals. So I've been tracking my numbers. I knew my schedule. I've been setting my goals. Like I knew if I set this amount of appointments, I'm going to get this many sales. Because I know by the amount of appointments I set, I know the averages of what actually sits with me. And I know the amount of people that sit with me. I know my sales ratios. For my sales ratios, I know what the average sale per home is. Like I know my numbers. I've been doing this long enough because I focused on the fundamentals, and that's where you want to get when you're in sales. And so I was just like, well, this is now a numbers game. If I need to sell this much per week, I need to have this many leads, because this many leads translates to this many appointments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I'm on my second run, and I ran every day. I did for my outdoor workout. So I'm on my outdoor run, and I'm listening to Andy. I always listen to Real AF, or I'd go back to MFCO Project and just listen. And he was talking about setting massive goals like that scare you. And I was like, $100,000. And then when I hear that, I'm like, $100,000 doesn't scare me. Like I've already kind of done the math in my head. I know I can do it. Like, and I'm also on a high. Like I'm in the alignment phase of 75 hard. You know what I'm saying? So like I'm feeling great. So I'm like, well, what does scare me? And I was like, what's something somebody's never done? And I was like, 200,000. No one's done $200,000 in a month off their own pen in 1 month. And I was like, can I do 200,000? Is it possible? I think I'm going to do 200,000. I'm going to do 200,000. And it was like this seed of a thought that just started to like evolve in my mind. And I was like, I think I could do it. And I was like, oh man, that's scary. Like this is real. And I called up a mentor of mine, really good friend of mine, good mentor. And he's a military guy. He was in the military. He's still in the military. He's a lieutenant colonel in the military. His name's Tyler Mitchell. Let's call him Mitch. And I called him while I'm still on the run. I was like, Mitch, bro, I'm doing 200,000. He was like, all right, what's your numbers? How many leads do you need? And he just jumps in and he's like, what do you need? How many appointments do you need to set? And we're talking numbers while I'm running. And he's like, I think you can do this. And I was like, dude, I know I can do it. And so we sat down, we like went over the schedule, literally Monday through Saturday. It's like Sundays I'm taking off. I need to have a day off. I need to be going to church. I'm still going to be tithing. I need to rest and relax. But Monday through Saturday, it is game on from the time that I wake up until 10 p.m. That's the time I will give. And I sold $225,000 of insurance in April, and I broke the record. And so when I tell you that, you think that you don't have the time. And by the way, I did it while also completing 75 hard, doing my 2 workouts every single day. I did it while also still I was building a team. I had team meetings. I still coached agents. I still took time to coach agents, help them with their sales. And I was like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to just like disappear from my team. I'm still going to maintain all the same stuff. Right. And then that's when I started recording and started doing podcasting. That was like, because someone was like, you should start recording your experiences and everything. Because I learned a lot that month. Because you have that many appointments in 1 month, like you a lot of reps. So I learned just so much. That was when I started recording and started podcasting to capture all the lessons that I was learning and help share it with people. And that was my 75 hard experience. And I've never looked back since.
That's so awesome. I know we could go forever, but we got to wrap up here right away. I know. Yeah.
I told you I'd be a little long-winded. I apologize.
Oh, good. We'll get you back on. I know that there was a lot of gold in there. The main thing, there was a ton, but main thing I got out of it is like, are you doing the work every day? And are you showing up to the training? And are you, learning every day? Or do you think you're special? I just think that's so good because so many people I feel think they're special. And that's sometimes can work against you. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I'd say maybe always can work against you. Like you want to have self-confidence, but not be quote special. But I always wrap up with 3 final questions. So let's say that someone is looking for their purpose. What is one sentence that you would say that could help them find their purpose?
Start working daily. Just don't try to find your purpose. Try to be excellent in whatever you're doing. Your purpose will show. Your purpose will show through that. Because your purpose comes through your passion, right? Yeah. You get good at something, you become passionate about it, and then your passion ends up being your purpose ends up being how you share your passion with the world.
Good. Number 2 is, what is your favorite quote and why?
Nosce te ipsum, know thyself. And it's my favorite quote because when it was written, it's in the Parthenon, in the Greek Parthenon. When it was written, it wasn't meant to know, like, you know yourself, know your capabilities, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. It was actually meant to know how you are perceived by the world. Because if you understand how people perceive you, you can tailor your actions to get the perceptions that you need to get the desired outcome.
I like that. And number 3 is, what's one word or sentence that you want on your gravestone?
Oh man, that's good. That's good. Man, that's really good. The first thing that came to mind was relentless. But I don't know if I want that on my grace. I don't know. Courageous.
Courageous and relentless.
Courageous and relentless.
I love it. So awesome. All right. If you run into someone in a coffee shop and they said, hey, Greg, that was awesome. I learned a lot. I'm going to work. I'm doing all these things that you suggested. I'm doing 75 hard. Is there something that you would say, you only have a couple minutes, but like real quick, that you would say that could tangibly help them kind of take it to the next level that maybe we didn't touch on?
Yeah. So I feel like in almost every entrepreneur space, the ability to communicate by written or verbal is probably a very lost skill because of the way social media is and the way that we now communicate nowadays. So reading and writing daily. Like if you read and write daily, I like to tell my agents to read, but then also afterwards, take about 5 minutes to digest what you read, your 10 pages, and then write out bullet points of what you learned from it. And what you're eventually doing is you're creating content that you can post later to help inspire other people. And get used to writing. And if you can read and you can, or not read, if you can write or and communicate verbally or by written communication, you can learn how to influence by both. And that's what it's really about. And sales and leadership are the 2 most important things when it comes to business. And both of them are just the ability to influence people, to help them to make a decision.
I love that. So cool. Learn how to communicate better. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. We'll have Greg's information in the show notes. Reach out to him if you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that. Make sure to check out his podcast. We'll have that in the show notes also. As always, like I said, go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. And together we can change the world. Thanks for being on the podcast so much, Greg.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it.